Dealers only buy a new DMS once every maybe 5, 6, 7 years, and many find themselves frustrated with the implementation and the DMS they've chosen after they've installed it. There's a reasonable amount of failed and dissatisfied installations. During this podcast, we'll talk about what are the key reasons for that and how you can avoid them when you're looking at your new DMS system. Hello and welcome to Dealer Tech Talk, the podcast where we talk about how technology is revolutionising motorhome and car dealerships around the UK. Today, we talk about the common mistakes that dealers make when they choose and install a new dealer management system and how to avoid making those mistakes. This podcast is sponsored by DMS Navigator, the dealer management system that helps you make you more efficient, more profitable, and deliver great customer service. And also by MyAutoCompanion, the app that helps you retain customers and gain lifetime performance from them. So, dealers only buy a new DMS once every maybe 5, 6, 7 years on average, and many find themselves frustrated with the implementation and the DMS they've chosen after they've installed it. There's a reasonable amount of failed and dissatisfied installations. During this podcast, we'll talk about what are the key reasons for that and how you can avoid them when you're looking at your new DMS system. So let's look at the things that make a difference. First of all, just looking back right at the beginning of the process, right when you start looking for your new dealer management system. The most important thing that you can do at that stage is very, very simple. Involve your management team. Get their input right at the very beginning. Make sure that you understand several things from them. The first one is, what do they like about what you've got already? You want to make sure that when you move, you don't lose what you've already got. But also conversely, what don't they like? What are the key problems that they perceive? Where are the issues that they've got? Have them think about where they're switching systems or rekeying, or where things are inefficient, or where the process doesn't really work for them. And also then, what would they like to see? What do they think that they need to have that they don't have today? And make a list of those, put them in a table, and use that when you go forward to looking for your DMS system. But also make sure that as you're going through reviewing your systems, your potential systems, that you also involve those same managers and that they are looking at each system with you. The benefit of all of that is twofold. The first one is that you're identifying correctly the gaps in the business. You can then gauge the systems you're reviewing to see whether they fill those gaps correctly. But also, much more subtly and much more importantly than any of that, you're involving your managers in the decision process. What that means, of course, is that once you've made your decision, your management team are already engaged, already involved, and you will get a much better implementation purely from that. The second problem that I hear all the time from dealers is they don't feel that they got support through the process of onboarding. And that varies by different suppliers and also by maybe the version of the system you buy. Some systems will rely on you to do it all yourself. To learn the system yourself, to do your own hand holding, do your own sort of project management, get everything working. And let's be honest, as a dealer, you're only changing systems once every 7 years. You're not an expert at doing that. As a supplier, they're installing systems day in, day out. So looking at how they do that and how you can get the best out of your supplier to make sure that you get the best support. How do they provide you with great project management? Do they provide you with great project management? What training do they do? How do they do that? How do they support you through those important first few weeks of using the system? If you fail at that time to gain a good use of the system and get good benefits during those first crucial weeks, you'll struggle to ever recover that. Your management team become disillusioned, the users become disillusioned, and you're always going to be fighting that uphill battle from there onwards. The other thing that dealers always complain about is the systems cost more than they thought they were going to cost. They didn't realise they had these costs. And that changes as time goes by. I hear a lot of dealers who will complain that they signed a contract with a supplier. It had a price on it. They got to maybe the 12-month point in that contract, and supplier came back with a new price. And that price was larger than the price that they were expecting. It's more than they wanted. Or they find that they've signed a contract, they've got a price, but then when they go to use certain features, those features aren't available. They have to pay extra for them, or there's a transaction charge. All of that's reasonably natural. All suppliers to a degree will have that kind of process. They want to make sure that they are providing the right system for their customers and priced accordingly. But that means that there will be things that perhaps that you're contracting for or think you're contracting for, but actually aren't there. So it's really important that you look at your price model with your supplier and ask several questions. What does that look like in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time? What happens, for example, if I want to add an extra user? I get a new member of staff. Do I pay what I paid for the original users, or is there going to be some magical price in there? What options are there for upgrades? What have I got? What am I not getting that I might want to pay for? What is there that's a transaction charge? Going into your relationship, knowing what all of that looks like, makes your relationship much better, and you know what you're going in for in the long term. The third thing that I see all the time is to do with compliance. So, VAT compliance, GDPR compliance, FCA compliance. Dealers are regulated in many areas. And whilst your dealer management system may not directly impact on all of those areas, you'll find that where there's a process that is overlapping into something else, there will have to be something in there. So, for example, if you're selling used vehicles under the margin scheme, you will have to generate some detailed reporting to back up your VAT transactions and be able to audit that. The VAT inspector will want to see how that's calculated and be able to back that up. Your dealer management system will need to be able to do that. Similarly, GDPR is a major piece of law. You're storing customer data. You have to be seen, and you have to know that you're taking care of that data. Where is it stored? How is it accessed? Do you know how it's accessed? Do you have audit trails of changes? Do you have the ability to give customers the information they need on request? Integrations is also an issue. 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I first started, integration was a non-issue. A dealer management system was an island. If it didn't do it, it didn't do it. It didn't integrate with anything. It wasn't even a word one used. But over the years, the concept of integration has become more and more strong. And integration takes place on several levels. There's integrations with third-party systems that may use. Dealers do use a multitude of systems. Those systems ought to integrate so that you have a nice, smooth business process without rekeying into different systems all the time, to where your data is staying in one place and you have single sources of truth for all your data. But also integration is about data itself. So integration with third-party databases. So some obvious ones: postcode lookup. How does it do? Does your DMS system do it? Do you have to pay for it? Vehicle registration lookup, MOT data lookup, your integration with your website. If somebody puts an inquiry on your website, does that flow automatically into the CRM function of your DMS system, if it has one? All those things are critically important, and it's quite important at an early stage that you identify all the different systems you use. And when you think of systems, don't just think computers. Your website is a system. Your email is a system. Your telephone system. They're all items that you might want to consider having integration with, and looking at the pros and cons and the benefits of that. That's one of the key areas where a good DMS can really make your life much, much better. The other thing becomes more to when you're being demoed your DMS system, and that's about the user experience in that system. It's not good enough to just tick a box and go, yes, the DMS does this. It'll do a part sale. It'll do a workshop invoice. It'll allow me to raise a sales order, whatever that is. You've got to think about how the process within that DMS fits with the way you do your job. So when somebody's demoing the system, or where you're trialing the system out, play through how your business processes work and how you would use that system. Does it feel smooth? Does it feel cohesive? Does it follow your business process? Or alternatively, is it a case of the fact that you might have to change a business process with your change of system? That's valid. It may happen. It probably will happen. For a lot of dealers, the way you do a job generally reflects the way your systems today allow you to do that job. So it's be natural that if you change the systems, you've got to change the process that goes with that. And many failures in DMS implementation are caused by that conflict between the way you work today and the way your system wants to work. And you'll hear phrases like, we've always done it like this. Why can't we do it like this in the future? That's fine. But if it's not going to work that way, you're going to fail. Either you had the wrong system, or you've got to adjust the way you do your work. And you must be open to seeing that just because you've done something in a particular way for a long period of time in the past, that perhaps that is the best way of doing that in the future. And that becomes part of your implementation as well, and part of your project management. You've got to maybe look at, how do we change the way we work? And there's lots of things in amongst that. You tend to find that you are at a certain level, and you're looking forward, thinking, well, when we finish, we're going to be here, a much higher level. But if you're not careful, that is too much of a jump to do in one go. And you've got to break that down. So in going back to project management, back to implementation, the key thing is to treat that jump a bit like a staircase, and actually take it into bite-sized chunks and move up that over a period of time. And the longer the period that time is, the smoother the staircase is, the lower the climb rate is, and you can handle it better. Obviously, on the other side of the coin, you've got to be able to do your job, so you need to be able to have a timeline around there. And finally, too many dealers actually end up picking the wrong system for their business. Hopefully, if we go through the other items we've already done, we've identified why that is. But don't assume that because your dealer mate down the road uses a system successfully, or your service manager used to work at a dealership that used a system, that system is the most appropriate system for your business. What you'll find is that all systems have pros and they have cons for different types of dealer. There are those that are much better in franchise dealer groups and work really, really well. But if you take those to a smaller independent dealer, they collapse into a heap. They don't work very well because the business processes are different. And conversely, the other way around, a good, small, independent system works really, really well in those businesses, may not scale for larger dealerships. So don't assume if you are going to ask for advice from other dealers, or even when you're reviewing the DMS system in a demonstration, think about, does that person or does that system work in a dealership that's like me, and how like me are they? So if you are perhaps looking at case studies, for example, the first question is that dealership in that case study, how like me is that dealer? Where are they different? Does that difference make a difference? If you get that right and look at the other items in there, you'll get the right system. You'll be able to then install it correctly. know where you're going with it, and get a much, much better experience through the whole process. Well, hopefully that's given you a really good set of tips to go through to picking your DMS system, installing it, getting sure it's integrated correctly, and making the best of your business and getting a business that works better for you, was more profitable, and delivers better customer service for your customers. If you want to subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, so you make sure you don't miss the next episode. This episode comes with a great guide that summarizes all the information I've talked about. If you go to the Dealer Tech Talk website, https://www.dealertechtalkuk.com/guides, you'll find a guide that goes through this episode that you can use as a template when you're looking at your next DMS system. Dealer Tech Talk is sponsored by DMS Navigator. I'm MyAutoCompanion. So till next time, goodbye.